Good evening, everybody, and welcome to
Hi.
another episode of the Dark Mirror Radio Show. And tonight, if bear with me, we are going to be talking about cryptids during wartime. And we're not just talking about any war. Well, we are talking about any war. We're not just talking about a particular war. We're just talking about wars in general where things have happened to groups of men or individuals that they can't explain, and it's all been centered around a strange being or a strange creature. So, how are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing all right, Wayne. How about yourself?
A bit tired. Had a good
Me too.
weekend investigating a place that hadn't been investigated before. And
Well,
then
that's always fun.
it was really good. The place itself was an old ironworks, and then it got turned into a department store, and then eventually, evening Nigel, and then eventually it got turned into a community centre, and sort of basically had to split up into teams, and we had 2 floors each, and went out and about, and basically we had a camera knocked over, we had items being thrown at the other end of the basement, some good pendulum work, which I don't normally do, but this time I had it suspended from a light fitting rather than somebody holding it, and we still had the pendulum move, so that was it was a pretty good experience. And then my youngest son decided he didn't want to go to sleep last night, so we ended up spending until 4 o'clock in the morning keeping him happy, and then I had to get up again at 7 o'clock to get my daughter off to school. So it's been a fun weekend.
I forget you guys don't have summer like we do here. The kids.
A lot of places have a better summer than we do. Evening, Rita. Right,
Hi, Rita.
let's. I've just got to share this out. There we go. Right. So anyway, the subject tonight is cryptids during wartime, and I have a top 10. How much of a top 10 it actually is something else, but it is quite interesting with some of the ones that I have found. We will be leaving one last one, which has happened recently in America, which is a bit of a shocker, to be honest, because it hasn't made mainstream news. So it's pretty weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it in turns to come out with a cryptid seen during wartime. So we're going to let Josh go first. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Josh. You can go first with your one.
All right. I got one probably everybody knows, but when the U.S. government decided to first put out night vision in Vietnam, familiar with this one? Every test subject who had these goggles on started firing rapidly into the sky and screaming about demons chasing them. Multiple different ranks. I also heard that it was deployed through the Army and the Marines, and both were having the same psychosis, I guess. They were saying they were seeing demons, not just eyes, like full-on winged demons chasing them. And then, lo and behold, they came out with the green ones, and problem was all gone.
Yeah, I had come across a few in my research where some of the troops it was being blamed on smoking too much of the wacky backy. Others were saying it was post-traumatic stress, obviously due to the situation. But when you actually speak to those people that were affected by it, there was a lot of rumor going around that there was stuff going on with the occult in some of the villages.
Well, absolutely. my grandfather had a friend who was a tunnel rat, and he said there was always really weird stuff going on underground that they would
Yeah.
find bones set up, all sorts of ritualistic looking stuff.
And
Worst job to have in Nam too. You
yeah,
got a pistol, a German Shepherd, and a radio and a flashlight.
and it was very similar during the Pacific conflict in the Second World War, where the likes of Iwo Jima and Bataan, they had networks of tunnels in amongst all the defences, and you could clear one defence, move forward, and you would find then that that original section of tunnels that you had cleared wasn't fully cleared because there's so many tunnels there that they got confused with what ones had been cleared and what ones hadn't. And so the Japanese were able to get back around them and pop up behind them. So they had to make sure that, you know, when they came out of one of these tunnels, they had to destroy the tunnel behind them so that they couldn't escape and pop up behind.
Which sure seemed like it was no easy task. It always seemed like they would have to go down actually deep in these tunnels, set up charges, and then I heard too a lot of the time when they would do that, it would just damage part of the tunnel. So it was easily repaired, and then they would just go off in another direction. I also heard a lot of the times when the troops would think they were on the trail, they'd come out in like a pen of like pig shit. They did like real nasty stuff in Vietnam. The other one too, I heard was you like to run wires around these tunnels. So when GIs would come by with their jeeps, they'd get decapitated. Nowadays, why our military vehicles
and
have bolts.
that's something people still do. There's a village in Kent called Pluckley, and a lot of paranormal enthusiasts like to visit down there. And I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, the locals were getting annoyed because paranormal investigators were going into the woods there, which was supposed to be haunted. And they were doing their investigations and they were leaving things behind, you know, their rubbish and stuff. They didn't clean up behind them. And the locals got a bit annoyed with it. So they were literally stretching string and bits of rope across the footpaths. So as people were walking down them, they were being tripped over or sort of being clotheslined. You know, the rope would go across the chest and knock them over. So in the end, the police had got involved, and it's now sort of almost frowned upon for people going down there. But as long as you're respectful, it shouldn't be an issue. But these were more like urbexers. You know, the urban explorers were going around there and they were just camping out in the woods, leaving trash behind.
The YouTubers.
Yeah,
the TikTokers.
Doing it for likes. So yeah, that's quite an old trick. But I'm always wary. I think if I'm going through a woods in the dark, I always walk along doing that.
Keep that in mind next time.
I don't like spider webs touching my face. Anything touches my face, and that's me, I melt. So, of course, I'm doing this as I'm walking along to stop anything from getting in my face. It is interesting. And my one, during World War I, the British steamer Iberian was cruising off the coast of Ireland when it was attacked by a German submarine, the U-28.
I got this one too down.
The Iberian tried to flee, but the U-28 pursued, firing shells and torpedoes. After taking 2 direct hits, the Iberian tipped up and sank with her bow in the air. The sinking would be all but forgotten today if not for an article written by the U-28's captain, Baron von Forstner. He wrote for a German newspaper in 1933, in which the Baron's account as he stood on the submarine's conning tower and watched the steamer sink. About 25 seconds after, it disappeared beneath the surface, when all of a sudden there was a large explosion, possibly caused by the ship's boiler detonating. The blast threw a mysterious sea creature clear out of the water. The animal was about 20 meters in length and crocodile-like in shape, with pairs of strong front and hind legs adapted for swimming, and a long head that tapered towards the nose. According to the Baron, the creature was visible for about 10 to 15 seconds at a distance of about 150 meters or so. And it was clear day, bright sunshine. The Belgian zoologist Bernard Heuvelmans, who coined the term cryptozoology and produced an influential book on sea serpents, considered the U-28 sighting one of the 4 most reliable in history. The incident was especially interesting since the explosion flung the animal all the way out of the water, allowing the Baron to see its entire body. Based on his description, Heuvelmans speculative that the creature might have been surviving species, oh, this is going to be a good one, of Thalattosaucia, a genus of giant sea crocodiles from the time of the dinosaurs. Now, despite Heuvelmans' assessment, skeptics suggest that the Baron might have made the whole story up. According to his account, 7 other crew members witnessed the creature, but unfortunately, 6 died during the war, presumably when the U-28 was sunk in 1917. The most common story is that another sinking ship exploded, hurling a burning truck straight into the submarine. But the only surviving witness was the sub's cook, Robert Mars, who never wrote about the incident, leaving the story to rely on von Forstner's account alone. Additionally, the 61 survivors of the Iberian apparently didn't see the creature, and in fairness, they might have been a little bit busy at the time trying to survive, which, you know, it is a bit of a. We know of sea crocodiles. You look at the Nile crocodile, and the crocodiles and alligators in Florida. You know, they've got access to the sea, so there's no reason why these crocodiles could be bigger. There's plenty of places for these crocodiles to hide and stay out of the way. So I think rather than say I don't believe it, I would be open to the possibility. Eric's just noticed your rabbit.
I mean, sea crocodiles get pretty big too. I mean, it could have just been something really, really old. I mean, look at that one, that legendary one from Africa that supposedly like killed 300 people.
Yeah.
He's massive.
Well, the Nile crocodiles are really big anyway, aren't they? But when they stand there and say that the size of it, you think, well, you know, if it's 20 meters in length, that's what, 60, 65 foot. That's long. And I would hazard a guess that's longer than in any Nile crocodile.
Yeah, the ones around Florida, I think 12 feet. But I know there's a program too. They like try to destroy any that get like too big.
Yeah,
because
I think it becomes a concern, doesn't it? Because you got people that go onto the Everglades.
Right. I feel like Florida's population is like retirees too.
Yeah.
You ever see that
and they're too slow
TikTok video of the dude getting his dog back from the crocodile from an alligator? He goes in the pond and he grabs it by the throat and he comes out and it's got his poodle and he gets it out and he pop pop pop.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Punch it on the nose. But
Record of croc is 54 feet.
Exactly. I mean, if you've got the world's largest crocodile that we've seen has been 54 feet that's been recorded. When you go back to the Jurassic era, you're looking 3 or 4 times the size. So if that is from the genus of crocodiles that were around in the Jurassic time, then you're looking at that being a baby. At 65 feet, that would have been a baby.
Yeah.
So what would be your next cryptid?
Well, I had to bring up the video from last year with the supposed angel uncovered during. Did you not see that one? The
No.
Russians discovered an angel while in the middle of fighting. Um, something happened with around some salt mine that blew open, and this huge statue, or it looks like a massive statue and really detailed of an angel with like really decrepit wings holding a sword, like it's sleeping.
I may have heard of something of that. I'm, I'm not too sure because the likes of Poland, they've got a big salt mine in Poland, haven't they? And
Yeah,
it's got its own cathedral that's been carved out of the salt. And sort of in an incident like that, you wonder whether it's because they've actually blown up something that's was already there, and this thing has been blown up with all the debris. But if no one knew about it and no one knew it was there, that would kick off an air of mystery, wouldn't it?
absolutely.
Can you imagine you're on the front line and you've just sent a load of rocket, you sent a rocket barrage in, blows up this area, and you see this statue of an angel come flying out. You'd be like, "Ugh!"
It's massive too.
Is there any record of how big it is?
I think it was like 12 feet.
So twice the size of the most people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is big.
Yeah, it shine. It didn't look friendly either, and is holding like clinched onto a sword with like hunched over.
That's a popular statue. I've seen plenty of them before, especially with Knights Templar.
Yeah.
It's that same pose. I've seen statues with angels in that pose, but I've seen a lot of statues of knights doing that same pose, where they've got the sword at the hilt like that, and then they're bowing down in front of it. So could it? I mean, was there anything else that followed on from that? Have they? Because obviously that's during the current one, isn't it? So
Yeah,
it's probably not exactly safe to go and investigate the area, is it?
right.
Yeah,
I don't know. All the videos I've seen in it too are in Russian. So
we'll go and do a day trip and see it.
the only Russian I know is from the Russian Village Boys, so and it's all profanity.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be a good idea. We went over there.
Probably not right now.
It's a bit like going to. It's a bit like going to the. Christ, I can't even remember the name of it now. The nuclear reactor.
Chernobyl.
Chernobyl. You know, it's like all these people that do the tours to Chernobyl, and you're like, seriously, you know, the place has got radiation. I saw a video the other day with a guy who was standing with a Geiger counter, and he said they didn't 100% clear the area, and he said, no doubt I will come across something that will spark off my Geiger counter. And he stood there and he said, I've got this as a level reading now. He said, but give me a minute and I'll find something. And he literally went walking around, and the Geiger counter started going bananas. And he literally picked up some soil and he sifted through it, and he found a piece of the reactor. And he's got this piece of reactor on this lead plate, and he's pointing the Geiger counter at it, and it was going bananas. And it was mental. And he was going, yeah, I can't hold onto it for too long because the level of radiation will make me sick. And yet you got all these people going over there on tourist holidays.
There's actually a group of guys that kind of remind me of like Jackass, but Russian. And this was before like the whole Ukraine thing kicked off. But they were going around swimming in all the areas.
Yes.
And drinking the water.
The guy had a deformed face, didn't he? Birth defect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were literally just swimming in the water underneath it. And you're just like, seriously, you are going to kill yourself. You know, but
It
Strange
made me
people
feel
do
better
strange.
about my countrymen being smarter, though. I was like, see, we're not the dumbest people on the planet.
There are some silly people out there. Even I wouldn't be that stupid. Excuse me. So I have, well, I'm back to, I think it's this World War One, World War Two. I don't know. The German town of Wittlich is home to a strange legend, which might not be a legend at all, if US soldiers stationed in the area are to be believed. According to the story, a deserter from Napoleon's army found his way to the town, where he attacked and murdered a local farmer and his wife. However, before the farmer's wife drew her last breath, she cast a curse on the feral soldier, turning him into a monstrous wolf. Mad with rage, the creature rampaged through the countryside until a mob of townsfolk hunted it down and killed it. The story is fairly well known. A local American football team even called themselves the Moorbuck Monsters, but not particularly exceptional by the standards of werewolf lore. More interesting are the experience of American servicemen stationed at the nearby Hahn Air Base during the Cold War. Apparently, a number of American troops saw a mysterious wolf-like creature while patrolling the forest edges of the base. According to two anonymous accounts collected by the University of Pittsburgh, military policemen investigating a perimeter alarm stumbled upon a dog-like animal which stood up on its hind legs and looked at them. The creature then took 3 long leaping steps and jumped over a high fence. The accounts differ on the exact height of the fence, but agree that it was taller than a man. The beast then disappeared into the forest. A sniffer dog was brought in, but it went berserk with fear, refusing to track the creature and run off. University of Maine's anthropologist Matthias Burgard subsequently collected several other stories from US servicemen who said they had seen strange animals or odd movements deep in the woods. One airman said he had been stalked by a hidden howling beast while walking his dogs. Another witness rejected the theory that the Americans might have been startled by local wild hogs. I grew up on a farm in the USA and this was no hog, the man said. Yet another serviceman offered Burgard an alternative explanation for at least some of the sightings. It was always fun to scare the new guys with stories of the werewolf and then make them do security check on the perimeter on foot. One of our canines was this big black Bouvier with bloodshot eyes. We would always send that dog's handler to meet the new guys. So very similar to Rendlesham Forest, an excuse has come out that they would prank the new guys. So do you reckon that could be them trying to cover up the fact that this werewolf does exist and does wander the woods?
I could very well see them being the government being like, "Yo, this is something we're using, so you come up with an excuse." And like,
Got to come up with something, haven't they?
right?
I mean,
Blame the new guys, and it's so like the military rule here too is like blame the new guys, blame the new guys.
we had that when I was going through recruit training for the Royal Air Force. We had to go into the gas chamber, and because we were newbies, the RAF regiment would play fun with us, and we'd all go in with our gas masks on, and they would throw this can of CS gas in through the window, and the corporal would then come in. He'd be with his gas mask on, and we had to tell him a joke. We had to take a gas mask off, take a deep breath, tell the corporal a joke. If he found it funny, we could leave. If he didn't laugh, you had to stay in there and wait for your turn to come round again. So, of course, 9 times out of 10, most people, they would tell the joke, coughing and spluttering, and he would purposely not find it funny. And I was one of those people that told a joke he didn't find very funny, so I had to stand there and wait. I wasn't coughing, I wasn't spluttering, I wasn't rubbing my eyes. And the second time round, I told him a joke about 3 ladies of the night, and he creased up laughing. So he let me go out. When I walked outside, everybody else was being sick all over the floor. They were crying, they're rubbing their eyes, their necks were going green. They were trying to douse themselves down with bottles of water. And that was then I discovered that CS gas doesn't affect me.
Huh.
But it just goes to show that when you're a newbie, these guys that have been doing it for 10, 20 years, they will play jokes on you. But
Gotta have fun somehow.
I think when the story goes right the way back to Napoleonic times, which is 1800s, I think telling a story of the werewolf to sort of more modern servicemen, you're not going to get away with just sort of pranking them with one of your own dogs running around the woods, because the story goes back even further. And you're looking, what, 170, 180 years?
Right, these guys just playing the same joke for 170 years.
Exactly. The Americans weren't even in Germany 170 years ago, so it wouldn't work. So the stories wouldn't add up. But if you told the story there and then, it could quite possibly they just pass the history of it to one side, and they'd be concentrating more on the here and now. I don't know. It's weird, but that's an interesting one because it's werewolves, and we haven't really sort of touched ground on werewolves. But with that story, the history's there as well, isn't it? So,
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I got into the Beast of Bray Road here in Wisconsin, which is a werewolf, basically.
Mm.
It's funny that was because my next one is about kind of the same thing. Group of knights called the Longbards. So you're familiar?
I've heard of them.
Um, well, they got themselves in a jam with another country, and they said they were going to send out their best warriors that were these dog-headed creatures, not werewolves, dog-headed creatures. And that army was literally like, we don't want to with that. Here you go. Here's safe passage. What is that?
Oh, yes. The link
Oh,
that Willow has just put up is for our fellow co-host Mark Manley's mum's funeral tomorrow. So if anybody wants to attend online, that's the link for the service tomorrow. I can't remember what time it was, but I think if you go by the link, it will tell you when it's due to go live. But I'm sure I will. I'll try and find out from Mark tonight if I can. Excuse me, while I just choke to death. And then I'll post it up on there. Put it up in the comments when I can. Oh dear. It's all your fault, Blossom. Excuse me. So anyway, what would be your next one?
oh, that was that one with them dog-headed men. And if you,
Well,
yes, but I wasn't done with it. Marco Polo said he's seen these as well. That him and his crew traded spices with them. And then there's more. The Bible even talks about it, or the Catholic, that their disease with these dog heads could be cured by baptism.
I can't remember what they're called now. Yeah, Anubis. That was it. I knew the name was there somewhere. Look at the Egyptians, and they worshipped Anubis, and he was a dog-headed man. And you look at some of the Egyptian temples; some of them are guarded by dog-headed men, dog-headed warriors. So it's possible. I mean, when you look at the Egyptians and these knights, there's two different faiths as such, and two different civilizations.
And then you even have the Nordics with their Uthra. If you're
Yeah.
familiar with them, they were like the berserkers, but they were more elite and could change into wolves.
So That's a possibility. I could see
And I mean,
that.
we're still having the sightings today too with the Michigan Dogman, the Beast of Bray Road. I mean, Michigan, the UP is so close to us too. I mean, it would make sense that this would be cross states.
Yeah, definitely. Strange. Exactly, Lynn. That's Anubis. The dog-headed warriors in the temples and guarding the corridors and entrances and things. That's the god Anubis.
Hmm.
I had to try and remember the name then.
But them things have an actual name too. I forget what they're called. Um, I'll find it eventually. But there's like a whole race of them.
Yeah.
100%. Are you in the UP? Upper Michigan.
Oh,
Because
right.
Michigan's weird. It's got that like spot that curls around Wisconsin, so like we intersect quite a bit.
Ah, right. So, well, I've got one here, which I got a bit confused when I first saw this one because it mentioned Oklahoma and Canada in one hit. In fact, in the first sentence. In 1919, a number of Oklahoman newspapers published a terrifying story from a Canadian World War I veteran named Captain F.J. Newhouse. According to Newhouse, Allied soldiers in the trenches at Mons had found themselves hunted by a terrifying beast. It all started in 1914 when Captain Yesquez of the London Fusiliers took 4 soldiers out into no man's land on patrol. When they didn't return, their concerned comrades thought they might have been intercepted by the Germans, but days later their dead bodies were found, just as they had been dragged down with teeth marks at their throats. From that point, things only got worse. Terrible howls echoed across the landscape, and soldiers reported seeing strange movements beyond the barbed wire. Patrols into no man's land would be found horribly mauled, as if by some great beast. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature seemed to disappear again. The mystery was only resolved when a German scientist named Gottlieb Hochmuller was killed in a Berlin riot at the end of the war. Apparently, Hochmuller's papers revealed a dastardly plot to transfer a madman's brain into a giant Siberian wolfhound, which was subsequently released into no man's land. This was part of a series of experiments which Hochmuller hoped would end the war in Germany's favour. How even a very crazy dog was supposed to resolve a world war remains unclear. Interestingly, Captain Newhouse seems to have been a real soldier, but otherwise the story falls apart quite quickly. For one thing, there is no record of a scientist named Gottlieb Hochmuller, and there was definitely no Captain Yesquez in the London Fusiliers. Yesquez is actually quite a rare name in England, although it's much more common in Canada and America, suggesting that F.J. Newhouse probably made the whole thing up. The Battle of Mons is also well known for the legend of the Angels of Mons, in which angelic beings, most commonly in the form of medieval bowmen, appeared to protect British soldiers. The legend started with a short story by the horror writer Arthur Machen, which appeared in the London Evening News in 1914. The story was written in the style of a newspaper report and wasn't adequately labelled as fiction, prompting many people to believe it was real. The story soon took on a life of its own, to the point that people refused to believe Machen had made it up. As Machen later wrote, the snowball of humour that was then set rolling has been rolling ever since, growing bigger and bigger till it is now swollen to a monstrous size. So we've now gone into that territory with these angels. But like you said with the Russia-Ukraine business, there's this angel. Although it being a statue, there's a similar pattern forming there, and yeah, there's what 100 years
Here's the
apart.
thing too, it's in a salt mine, and like, did it just get preserved? You know, is this
Yeah,
some angelic being that just went to sleep that's been guarding over them, or he does not look friendly. He does not look like the type of angel you'd want to be praying to.
it's something like out of Doctor Who,
Yeah.
the weeping angels. They're creepy. Yeah, don't take your eyes off them because they'll get closer. But that one, I can't. And I know. German scientists and doctors did a lot of experimenting during the Second World War. Particularly Dr. Mengele, who did a lot of experiments on twins.
Yeah.
And I think his main experimentation was bordering on the lines of
That song's about him. Sorry to interrupt. That song's about him. Slayer. You familiar with Slayer at all?
I know of Slayer, but
Angel of Death is about that scientist.
Yeah.
They sing about that, about the twins in that song.
Yeah. But the whole idea was that they were trying to generate soldiers as quick as possible. And so he was trying to do all these genetic experiments, and he thought that twins would be the key to solving that problem. And so obviously when they came in on the trains and he found a set of twins, they were taken away for experimentation.
I still don't understand what would make him think. I don't know if he was looking for some gene or just he seriously was pondering it himself and was just like, how many of that too of those crazy scientists that the Nazis employed who were just like, I want to know this and they're giving me a shit ton of money, so and bunch of freedom, so I'm going to just do this.
Yeah. I mean, you could look at it and go, well, it's all about, I mean, okay, DNA wasn't discovered for at least, I think, 40 years after the war. But he knew that there was obviously a trait there that created twins. So he was trying to find out quite possibly what created that genetic imbalance that created them. And could there be a way that they could speed up the process using these twins because they've got that genetic imbalance?
And then we have later on one that we know about DNA. Apparently, the Russians, I don't know if you heard about this, were apparently messing around trying to splice our DNA with gorillas because they figured they would have been the perfect soldiers. They would have been way more durable.
Trying to create a super soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Going down the genetic route instead of going down the technological.
I've seen some of the videos of what some of these things that happened. The worst one were the dogs in Russia, or maybe that was Germany, where they were doing head transplants.
Yeah.
You ever see that? Yeah, those are some of the more disturbing. YouTube used to be a whole bunch of strange back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, even when I saw this particular one about putting a brain over into somebody else's body, you know, I'm thinking to myself, hang on a minute, because if you sever your spinal cord, you're paralyzed. That's it. It's game over. You're not moving again, isn't it? So
yeah, not so much nowadays, but back then for sure.
Yeah. I mean, back in 1940s, definitely. If you severed your spine, you were knackered. That was it. You're in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Forget about it.
Pretty much up until the 80s, I feel like.
But the spinal cord is attached to your brain. So to be able to transfer the brain, you would have to transfer the spinal cord as well. And that's obviously part of your nervous system. And that nervous system runs throughout your body. So if he was going to do that, that would have meant he would have had to cut all the ties with the rest of the nervous system. And they'd have to reconnect them in the new body, unless he doesn't want that person to feel any pain. Or he won't feel anything, because that's what the nervous system is there for. So he would just then put the brain in, put the spinal cord in, and just hope that he's not going to be paralyzed at the same time. You're just going to end up. You're just going to end up with a wolfman laying on the bed going, I'm going to bite your leg.
Come closer.
Not really going to do much, is he? I mean, no spinal cord. So what are they going to do? They're sitting down the trenches in a wheelchair. That's not going to work. I haven't. That's interesting. I'll have to have a look for that.
The whole Super Soldier program is just strange in general. I actually did an interview a couple days ago with the True Love podcast, and I talked about that. Somehow we ended up on that topic a little bit.
But it's like taking medication, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To sort of push out emotions so that you're not fearful of going into battle.
Not necessarily. We actually have a guy that's in UFC right now. I forget his name. He's an American fighter, but he's a Cuban immigrant. He was brought over with the whole Cuba incident. What was that? Like 74?
Yeah.
I think it had something like that. But anyways, he was brought over as an infant. He's an older gentleman now, but he's never been knocked out ever.
Right.
And UFC officials are like, "Well, do you mind if we get a CT scan of you?" And his head is thicker than everybody else's. And then it like somehow the owner of UFC, Dana White, went and helped him. They got some of these records from, I'm sure they bought it from Cuba. And yeah, his dad was in the military and they were doing tests. They were injecting him with something as an infant before his mom fled here with it.
So did they go on to doing finding out his dad's records?
I imagine so. I think his dad's still alive in Cuba currently.
So they would, well, I mean, to follow on from that, they'd have had to have looked at the dad to see what effect it's had on him and how it's then been able to pass down to his son.
No, they weren't. Yeah, some along that lines, but it sounded like they were actually experimenting on the infant when he was an infant. Like,
oh, right, okay,
yeah, they did something that altered his DNA.
right. Because I know, obviously, on the normal side, they would smoke cannabis and whatnot, wouldn't they, during the Vietnam War? And that was to sort of try and get rid of nerves and sort of calm them down a bit.
I think it was just sort of, it's growing there. We're like 17. Life sucks. Why not?
I mean, I know when I first joined up into the Royal Air Force, we had to go straight to the med centre and have injections. And we had one we were told it was yellow fever. And we went, why are we getting a yellow fever injection for? And they went, because the first place you'll be going is over to Iraq and Kuwait. I'm like, oh, great, thanks. I haven't even got through recruit training yet, and you're telling me where I'm going. So we had to have this yellow fever injection straight away. And literally, while I was in the med centre, they gave us the injection. Not a problem. The second I got out in the fresh air, it was like someone had stitched the tennis ball under my arm, under my skin. Bloody great big bump came up just from that one injection. I'm like, yeah, that's not too much of an adverse reaction, is it? Well, yeah, thanks for that. But it was a weird one. So we go on to your next one then, Josh.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of super soldiers, one of my friends that's involved in all that has a British guy that he met, and we might have to have him on sometime.
Right.
He did the one with the Germans and the sea monster already. Oh, Bigfoot in Vietnam. I've heard few people talk about this now, that they were in the jungle and there was stuff thrown at them and they seen these man beasts.
Yeah.
that stalked them. Now we're way too big to be the enemy combatants.
Yeah, I have seen quite a few reports, um, particularly from that time period and that area, and they all kept saying it's the villagers are up to something, and there was rumours that the villagers, um, because they would have shamans or their version of a shaman,
Right?
and they'd
Here's
be
another
calling
thing I'm gonna throw out
forward an
there though
evil
too.
spirit. Sorry.
Here's another thing I want to throw out with all that too was how popular LSD was at the time too.
Yeah.
And now they're actually saying uh, that you might actually be tapping into something spiritually while doing that. I mean,
Well, yeah, because the CIA used LSD, didn't they, with uh, old MK Ultra.
yeah, I think they
So,
made most of the drugs.
so I mean, the CIA used things like LSD and that for MK Ultra to do astral projection and astral viewing and all that lot. So it's quite possible that it, it could be that them people were experienced some sort of form of hallucination caused by what they'd taken, or it could have been the rumor that had been going around was that the local witch doctor or whatever it was in the local villages had called forward an evil spirit which played with their minds as well. I personally would go down the LSD route, and in
Right.
that situation, knowing what kind of, I don't know, that it would be a form of fear, because
I
obviously
don't even know if it's
they're all young
that.
lads
I
and
mean,
whatnot, and they're taking this drug and not knowing what's coming out of that forest. That would scare the living daylights out of most people.
right? I mean, it could even be more than that. I mean, a lot of people that I know who are like really call themselves squatchers or the Bigfoot hunters.
Yep.
They say that Bigfoot is like this spiritual being that's connected to the wilderness. I mean, maybe they were tapping into something. I mean, who knows too? I mean, these guys were being deprived of food and water for fucking days. It's a shitty situation,
Yeah.
you know. Maybe they did like tap into some sort of thing with the jungle there. Just like the red lenses in the night vision too was so creepy. And then you think about them glasses that were made, the dicycling glasses, and it reminds me right to that.
I know with the early technology of night vision, it was very grainy and would only work for a set distance. Nowadays, the night vision goggles that they use now have got quite a range on them, and you could see like a bush at 100 meters, and you'd be able to make out every leaf on it. And when it moved, you could see every leaf moving. Back in the 70s, things like the night vision weren't 100% brilliant. So, could it be that because of that quality wasn't there, that it played tricks with their minds? Or was it actually they were picking up stuff, but the technology was getting the blame?
That's what I honestly think it was. Is they were seeing some because in these reports it says it went from privates to captains to corporals that were using it, and they were all having the same delirium where they were rapidly
Yeah.
firing in the air. They were panicked. They wanted to move the troops. They wanted to be out of the jungle because of these things that they were seeing. There were some Huey pilots were talking that wore these two were talking about being chased by dragons.
Yeah. I've known of helicopter pilots that have been using night vision cameras on the helicopters, and they've reported seeing stuff that they can't see with the naked eye, because obviously it's too dark. But the normal cameras are not picking them up, but the night vision cameras are. And you can also go down the road of saying that the heat signature cameras that detect the heat, and they stand there and
Yeah,
go, we picked up a heat object in this section of forest, and yet when we put the searchlight down there, there's nothing there. but that's probably because the searchlight has now gone on, and whatever it was that was generating that hate has gone. Oh shit, they're looking for me. I need to do something about it quick. And it goes into the film Predator when Arnold Schwarzenegger covers himself in mud so his heat signature doesn't get picked up. You know, could that creature have then gone, right, I need to do something about this, they're looking for me, and gone somewhere so that heat signature can't be found. But what you just come out with there brings me into one I've just come across, actually. And this is about Vietnam, but this is after the Vietnam War. So the British zoologist John Mackinnon achieved fame in the 1990s when he helped discover 3 new mammals in Vietnam's remote Vu Quang Nature Reserve. But in his 1974 book, In Search of the Red Ape, Mackinnon suggested that there might be an even more extraordinary creature hiding in the rainforests of Southeast Asia. According to Mackinnon, he was trekking through the Malaysian state of Sabah when, and this is his quote from his book, I stopped dead, amazed at what I saw. I knelt down to examine the disturbing footprint in the earth, a print so like a man's, yet so definitely not a man's, that my skin crept, and I felt a strong desire to head home. The toes looked quite human, as did the shapely heel, but the sole was both too short and too broad to be that of a man, and the big toe was on the opposite side of what seemed to be the arch of the foot. Mackinnon's Malay boatman told him that the tracks belonged to the forest people, or Batatut. Say that when you're drunk. But Mackinnon apparently preferred not to investigate further. I was uneasy when I found them, and I didn't want to follow them and find out what was at the end of the trail. I knew that no animal we know about could make those tracks. Without deliberately avoiding the area, I realised I never went back to that place in the following months of my studies. Mackinnon's experience helped bring wider attention to the legend of the Batatut, the little Bigfoot as it's called, that supposedly lurks in the jungles of Indochina and Borneo, which may help explain an unusual sightings reported in Craig P. J. Jorgensen's book, Strange But True Stories of the Vietnam War. According to Jorgensen, 6 unnamed American soldiers were deep in the Vietnamese jungle when they spotted a strange ape-like creature around 5 foot tall and covered in red hair, walking upright through a clearing. The soldiers speculated that it could be an orangutan, but then realised that there were no orangutans in Vietnam. Sadly, the creature quickly vanished, and the 101st Airborne Division lost out on a potential amazing new mascot. I know about the 101st. That was good old Easy Company. So that is another. I put it another story from different people about something that walks around in that forest, and that would be a sort of a different sighting, wouldn't it? So there's obviously got to be something there that, you know, a red-haired ape. Oh, it's an orangutan. No, there's no orangutans in Vietnam. Okay, so what was it?
Right.
If it wasn't orangutan, what was it?
We have this cryptid here in the U.S. I believe it's like around the Appalachian Mountains. They're called the devil monkeys, but they're kind of like a cryptid, like almost a Bigfoot. They're red, but they are very violent, and they go in packs, and they're nowhere as near as the size of a Bigfoot. They're like the size of a small child.
So could it be a giant red squirrel?
No, it's more like a native group of baboons.
Oh, right, okay.
Is what they're described as, and the way they attack too, like they ambush.
So a bit like the baboons on the Rock of Gibraltar.
Yeah,
they're not odds. I mean, they're thieves. They wait for you to come along and they nick stuff out of your handbags if they don't take your whole handbag. They're weird, but it's
evolution.
Yeah,
They'll steal your shit.
It's a bit like watching, what was it I watched the other day? Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That's a good film. I do like that. But
I watched all the originals. I'm starting to catch up on the newer ones.
I do like the older ones, but I think the newer ones explain things a little bit easier, you know, on what happened and how it all came about. But yeah. So we're going to go on to the last one because it's almost 10:30.
Yeah.
And
I had another soccer game today.
Oh, good luck to little man then, because we heard about last week. So
yeah, he's actually turned out to be quite the little star.
That's good. That's good. You know, I mean, he scored. Was it 1 goal or 2?
2, but he had scored for the past 2 years. He scored for each team he's been on the first goal of the year.
Oh, brilliant! That was good.
Oh.
So our last one, and I've just found this out, and this has happened very, very recently, and this actually happened on Lake Superior, of all places. Now there was I'm going to have fun trying to pronounce this, because there was an iron ore freighter called the Michipicoten, which actually hit something under the water in Lake Superior. But it was in the middle of the lake, which is roughly about 150 feet deep. So it's quite deep in that section. And as a result, the ship started to list because it created a hole in the hull. And it listed to 15 degrees. The ship itself is 689 foot long. But teams then arrived to ensure that the ship didn't sink. They patched up the hole and they managed to get the list back to a 5 degree. But there has been a legend on Lake Superior of a creature called the Mishipetsu. I think that's how they call it, which means the great lynx in Anishinaabe. I don't know if that's pronounced right, but it's a Native American Indian tribe from that area. But there is a pictograph or a cave painting, I should say, at the Lake Superior Provincial Park. And it looks feline in appearance, but also resembles a dragon. So it's a lot of other sources are saying it's a cross between a lynx and a dragon. Some people have said it's got horns and scales that look like copper. And it literally comes out of the lake. And it's alleged that it's responsible for a lot of the huge waves, riptides, and crazy weather in Lake Superior. And that was within the last week.
Wow.
From the reports I've managed to find, it was all within the last week. And they literally, I mean, the ship itself, 689 foot long, iron ore ship, and it hit something in the middle of the lake.
Glad I wasn't part of that weld team. Yeah, you got to go in the bottom of the lake. Oh yeah, there's some panther monster dragon down there waiting for you. We got a spear gun and a guy to wait for you though. Don't worry about it. Just weld your heart out.
But the thing is though, is surely that ship has made that route many a times, because they don't just go any old route, do they? They're given a course to plot, and they go from point A to point B, and that's it. That ship must have made that route so many times,
over and over and over again. That is really strange.
Yeah. So in 150 foot of water, going that route every time since it's been in service. I'll have to try and see if I can find out how long the ship has been in service. But if it gets from one side of Lake Superior to the other, say twice a day, and it's been in service for 2 years, that's a lot.
Right.
So, you know, it's like 1,300 times in 2 years it's travelled across Lake Superior and not hit anything. So it does seem a bit strange. I mean, what this Mishapest 2, whatever it is, the Great Lynx creature, apparently are these cave paintings in the provincial park actually depicts the creature that's in the lake, and it don't look nice, but I would say it looked more of a dinosaur than of a cat. So have we got is there a Loch Ness in Lake Superior?
It's possible. I mean, we have Champ right by New York. If you're familiar with that one in Lake Champlain.
Yeah, definitely.
Certainly no in Scotland.
You never know. It might come to Loch Ness for a holiday.
Scotland always made me wonder, though, about that and Crawley, because his whole mansion is like right where the sightings were too. Was that something him and Lovecraft summoned into the lake and were like, "Oops"?
I'm very skeptical in the whole Nessie situation.
I'm
very, very
about
skeptical.
the Aleister Crowley. I don't think he was as like he was, like people are saying he was.
I don't think Kylie. Sorry, Josh, on you go, love.
They say his wife was really the magical one, or the lady that he lived with. There's a lot of incidents like that where he was just kind of a pompous ass.
Yeah, I mean, we did discover last week that there was a few things that, I mean, Lois likes Aleister Crowley, don't you?
Yeah, I love Aleister Crowley.
Lois did learn something new last week, didn't you, about the ritual that he did?
Yeah, that did.
The fact was, the mansion that he had in Scotland, there was a church there on the site where the house is now. And that burned down with everybody inside. So there was something there before Aleister Crowley even had the place.
Yeah.
So
I always find this
subject that was already there.
Probably. And this is why I'm very, very skeptical about them rebuilding for a fourth time, because not only did they have the church in Aleister Crowley, you also had Jimmy Page, who also had a fire. So it was like, was this got to be fourth time lucky?
I don't know.
Repeating itself.
It's the scary thing when it comes to that with Aleister Crowley, though, is Abnu. And if you're familiar with that, that's his guide. He did multiple paintings of it, and it looks like a gray alien.
Yeah.
It even's got the cape like it.
I think it needs to be. I think the site needs to be blessed. It needs to go back to consecrated ground again before they can do anything else with it.
To be honest, I wouldn't even build there anything at all. I would just leave it as a ground. I just wouldn't even build anything.
An Aleister Crowley Museum.
Maybe that'll burn down.
Search an idea.
What he's like, boys, what he's like. There is a guy, Josh. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, because I know crypto's your thing. It's not really mine. It's not really my area. But there's a guy called Steve Felton, and he gave up his life. He gave up his job, house, the full shebang, and he's lived in Loch Ness for many years to try and prove Nessie.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him. He's got all the ships with the sonars all over him, right? He's like really like just basically, if you're familiar with like the Sea Shepherds, he's got like a big crew like that, just looking for Nessie, divers.
Yeah,
like he's just blowing this fortune, and sadly, he's not finding much.
No. Again, you guys are the crypto experts. I'm just, as I said, when I heard you were doing cryptos, I was like, oh Jesus, this is not my field. What the hell?
I mean, it makes you wonder. There's a lot of accounts about dinosaurs being around, but so I mean, it makes you wonder. And then like the stories Marcus told me about, the stories his dad told him when they was training in the jungle, makes me a complete believer of that.
Well, you got the likes of the Komodo dragon, crocodiles.
Right?
Never thought that.
They're all creatures that have been around since the dinosaurs. They're just the lucky ones that have managed to survive, and they've evolved to their habitat. So they're the closest descendants to the dinosaurs that we're ever going to know.
Right. I mean, luck not to creepy bastards. I wouldn't say they're lucky. I've seen one swallow a goat whole once. TikTok video.
Yeah, some of the bigger ones actually do attack villages.
Yep.
I've read stories where they've attacked villages and actually taken people. So
it sounds
I wouldn't want to argue with a Komodo dragon.
No, and that bite, that bacteria bite, it's nothing to play with.
No.
Worse than venom.
It's nasty stuff. So
somehow they can track you with that bite too. They have some creepy thing.
It's probably something to do with the chemical composition of the poison that's in that, the bacteria stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably got a scent within it, like with a wasp. If you kill a wasp, it releases that pheromone that attracts all other wasps.
Yep.
And it's probably the similar sort of thing with the Komodo dragon and the iguana. It has that bacteria that sort of has it there that it can detect, like a scent. That's why they're always sticking their tongues out.
Hey,
Evening, Lauren.
Hey, everyone in the chat. I've said he's waving like the Queen.
Hello.
I don't know because I'm American.
Anyway, so tonight it is another short one, simply because Josh has got to go off and support his son playing football or soccer, as we like to call it.
He calls it football. He likes the Americans have it wrong. I'm bringing it back. It's football.
Yeah.
And I'm like, son, we live in Packer country. I don't think it's going to work.
So good luck to Josh's son for his game today, this afternoon even. I'm losing all track of what the time is, to be honest.
Right.
Mark will be back with us next week, hopefully, all being well. So our best wishes go out to him for tomorrow. Our thoughts are all going to be with you, and some of us all sort of be there. And obviously we'll be returning next week at 9:30 again on the Dark Mirror Radio Show.
Or 3:30 if you're an American.
Or 3:30 if you're on the stateside, or on the other side of the pond. Because it is a pond now, I suppose.
Yeah.
It may well just be a pond because we're getting over there quicker and better than we used to.
Right.
And we do have other shows out there as well on we'll have Simply Spooky show tomorrow night. I think that's usually about 8:00, isn't it?
No, it's 7 to 8 tomorrow night. I don't know what the subject is, so.
Right. 7 to 8 on the Simply Spooky Network tomorrow night. And then Thursday nights to the grave and back. What was it? Autism.
Autism awareness, yep. And we will be joined with.
On Thursday and Friday's Frighteners as well, isn't it?
Friday Frighteners will be talking about media versus psychic.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought we're doing autism awareness on both shows.
No, just the one show, because we've already did it in Frighteners, so I wanted to concentrate on To the Grave and Back because we haven't done it. We've got a special guest. We've got Belle Norbury, who's joining us for the autism awareness, so I'm looking forward to that one. Sorry, Tuesday night show is called Hide Behinds. You'll need to check out what that is, guys.
I'm hiding behind that. There's a hide behind. You can't see me, I'm hiding. See, Josh is hiding. You're down to a T there, Josh.
Right.
And I'm trying to hide behind a bio pen.
Yeah, you're not working that one, right?
Shit.
The pen's just not wide enough.
Just let me go up then.
So anyway, we're going to love you and leave you, and thank you for joining us tonight on the Dark Mirror Radio Show. So we'll have a toodle pip and good night from Josh,
See you later, everyone.
and toodle pip and good night from Lois.